And I hope that you had a good 2024. And you know what is the hardest portion of a race to finish? Is the last 100 meters, The last few hundred meters are always the toughest to finish. You need to be very faithful and persevere. So we have a few more days until 2024 is done. And we'll enter into 2025. And if you're like me, I'm barely finishing 2024, all right? It's been a very intense year and lots of things happening. I hope that and pray that 2025 will be a little bit different, but it seems every year it gets tougher and harder. Do you guys see the same thing, or is it just me? But today we're not here to talk about this. I'm here today to encourage you for your walk in 2025 with Jesus. Amen? That's what we're here for. When the calendar is about to turn to a new year, many of us take the time to reflect on the past year. I'm not sure if you do that sometimes. If you have a few more days left in the old year, you just, reflect. We think about the good times and the difficult times we had in the past year, and we think about opportunities we might have missed or things we might have done better. Reflecting is very, very important, and it's very important in our spiritual lives as well, thinking through about the things that have happened. Now, there was a research published in 2014 at Harvard University, and they looked at employees, and they tested them for 10 days. And at the end of every day, every employee of that company would come and reflect on the day, how the day went, for 10 days in a row. Do you know that the research showed that after 10 days practicing reflection at the end of the day, the performance increased by 23%? That's not bad, isn't it? If we can improve our work performance by 23% after 10 days of reflection, can you imagine what that could do in a whole year if you reflect on the things every day and make adjustments, make changes, and move forward? Arthur H. Salzberger says this: for 11 months and maybe about 20 days each year, we concentrate upon the shortcomings of others. We do that. We always judge others. We concentrate on the shortcomings and failings of others. But, he says, for a few days at the turn of New Year, we look at our own. It is a good habit. It's a good habit to look at your own life. It's a good habit to reflect on the past year and see things that happen and what things need to be changed as we enter in the new year. Now, there is one important thing that I want you to remember when you reflect things. There is a trap that many Christians fall into this trap as they reflect on the past year. The trap is this, and Satan sets this trap for us. We usually as humans tend to always concentrate on what? On negative things that have happened in the past. That's the trap. That's the humanity. We concentrate on negative experience in the past years to the point where we have a hard time moving forward. Have you seen people like that? They're so concentrated on a bad thing that happened in their past, and they can't move forward. They're stuck in that past. Now, it's good to reflect on those things, but please make sure you don't fall into that trap. To avoid this trap that the devil sets for us, we must focus on the positives. And I'm struggling with that as well. We all struggle with that because we want to focus on negatives. And when we do that, we get stuck in the past and we can't move forward. And the devil likes you being stuck in the past and always being negative. That's why we have so many negative Christians, because we are always stuck on negative experiences. Katrina Wagner says this: by focusing on what went right Rather than dwelling on what went wrong, we actively encourage our brains to make space for achievement, recognition, and happiness. Making an effort to accentuate the positive can also aid stress management. Anybody stressed here? Oh, yes. I can't even start to tell you how many stressful situations we all faced during this last year. But when we focus on those things and the negative things in the past, we become even more stressful and more miserable. So she continues, making an effort to accentuate positive can also aid stress management by providing an effective tool to help us let go of the past and look to the future without anxious feelings weighing us down. You know, there is so many of us that fall into this trap, and I would be the first to admit it, that I do fall into that trap as well, many, many times. Focusing on the negatives. That's where a lot of stress comes from as well. And we become miserable in our experiences. So, as we're about to enter into this new year in 2025, God is asking of us today to do some reflecting. Okay? He wants us to reflect. Now, we find a story in the Old Testament where God is asking the children of Israel to do some reflecting. And we're going to go back to Haggai chapter 1, verses 2 to 5 in a second. But let me set the background here. This is the background of this story. You know, Haggai is one of the smallest books in the Old Testament. It has only 2 chapters, but it has such a powerful message, the book of Haggai. You know, and so you can find it at the end of the Old Testament somewhere. It's one of the minor prophets. And so this is the background. For over 15, close to 16 years after the return of the nation of Israel from Babylonian captivity, the Bible tells us that the temple still remained in ruins, was not rebuilt, even though God sent them back, and their main purpose was to do what? To rebuild the temple. So over 16 years they've been back, and they started to do some work. They were very enthusiastic in the beginning, and everything was going well. And after 16 years, the temple was still not finished. Now, the nation of Israel, the people, start making excuses and even convince themselves that they were right not to finish the temple. While they stopped the work, while they stopped the progress of the rebuilding of the temple, they never stopped to evaluate that they might be wrong. They never stopped and thought about, maybe we're wrong. You know, all of you know about Christopher Columbus, right? The explorer that discovered America, right? And so he set sail on September of 1492, and he wanted to find a trade route to what? To Asia. That was his goal. He never thought about America, all right? He was going to Asia. And on October 12, 1492, he landed what he thought was in Asia, but it actually was what actually right now it's known as San Salvador, on an island in Caribbeans. An interesting thing about Christopher Columbus, not realizing that he had actually discovered the islands in the Caribbeans, he thought he had found Asia. He spent, and that's the thing here that bothers me a lot, he spent most of his life convincing himself, as well as others, that he had landed in the islands off of China's coast. The rest of his life, he did not want to admit he was wrong, so he was trying to convince himself and others that he was right. The rest of his life. All of his life, he believed and lived for something that was not true, something that was not accurate. Convinced he was right, he never stopped to evaluate that he might be wrong. Evaluation or reflection does that to us. Because we're so proud, we don't want to admit our mistakes, we need to stop and evaluate and think and see, listen, that's wrong, I must admit that. But our pride doesn't allow us to do that. But by stopping and evaluating, we might get to that point where we are ready to admit that we are wrong. Israel was in this situation as well at this time. And I wonder how many of us spend our lives doing the same. We get to some tangent in our spiritual experiences and we think it's the right one. We have some theologies in our spiritual experiences and we think they're the right ones because they have been revealed to you directly from heaven.